Good afternoon. Recording. Okay. Good evening for those in Turkey, and good afternoon for those in Argentina. Today we are going to discuss the elections of Turkey, and the elections in Turkey do not affect only Turkey, and the results of these elections were expected in a wide range from the West to Middle East, from Latin America to Africa. So the results were very curious. All people were wondering who is going to win. The candidates and parties have been debated for a long time. In this panel, organized by AYBİR, we are going to try to discuss the results of the elections and how the results will affect the future. And we are going to try to evaluate the elections on the basis of the results, concepts, and the analysis. We have three very distinguished panelists who are experts on their fields. Mr. Resul Sardar has been in media field for many years. He is currently working in Al Jazeera, and he is going to speak about media and how media frame, or how media, especially Arab media, sees the election and the results. Second panelist will be Mehmet Özkan. He is an expert in international politics and professor at the National Defense University. And the third panelist will be Ariel Gonzalez. He is an academic in Argentina, and he is professor in the Department of International Relations. And before we start, I would like to inform you that how we are going to discuss and how I'm going to moderate this panel. And I would like to introduce myself. I am Mehmet Rakipoğlu. I've just finished my PhD just 2 months ago. I'm now currently working in Batman University in International Relations Department. Today, we are planning to discuss the topic in 3 rounds. So most probably we will take it like 45 minutes. In the first stage, I will ask each panelist the same question: how should we read the elections, the results? And I will ask them to make an overall general assessment on your expertise. And the second stage that I will ask them how they evaluate the elections in their area of expertise. And the last stage, I will ask them to make an assessment how they see the future scenarios and possible effects. So let's start with Serdar Bey, if you are okay. We start with you. I ask you, how do you see how did the Arab media, or generally media, frame the elections? Why it was almost for all Arab countries? You know, I got many calls from Qatar, from Sudan. They were following the situation in Turkey. They were always asking who's going to win. You know, they were curious why they consider this election important, and why it is considered as an important election for Arabs, especially for Arabs.
Well, so there's no doubt that this election was definitely the most important election of 2023. So, and reason for that, it is because of Turkey's geopolitical stance here. So now we're not talking only about the regional regional power, but we are talking also about an international actor as well. So that's why the outcome of this election, anyway, is not only going to have a significant impact on the region, but globally also it's going to have it's going to resonate in terms of the. So that's why the whole region was quite interested in, because there's a lot at the stake for many of the stakeholders here, for many of the shareholders there. So I think the outcome of this election are definitely quite remarkable. However, if we just need to classify them internally and internationally, I think for now, as President Erdogan has yet won another term, another election, after being 40 years in the politics and more than 2 decades in power as prime minister first and then as president. Now, probably he's feeling much more comfortable. The stress and all the tension of the election is over now. And so now the nation, the Turkish nation, has given him another mandate for the next 5 years. So probably we're going to see an Erdogan that is more comfortable and less confrontational. However, when it comes to Turkey's national interests, Steve, we're going to face a tough guy there. So internationally, if we just see the trends, what are the possible scenarios? I think the regional rapprochement that just a couple of years ago actually has started, the rapprochement with the United Arab Emirates, with Saudi Arabia, and with Egypt. I believe these rapprochements are going to go to their second phase. It's going to be reconciliation, and maybe as a next stage, even an integration of the policies in that sense. So, because these countries, these Arab countries, the rift between Turkey and these Arab countries has just been apparent after the Arab Spring, and these countries are not the traditional competitors of Turkey, but rather they have been the contemporary rivals because of the Arab Spring. Turkey and this country, they had different approach when it comes to imagine a new Middle East. So I think both sides by that now are realizing that Turkey's definitely position was anti-status quo. And these countries wanted to keep everything as it is. But after almost after 1 decade, now both sides have realized that actually that's not possible. Probably they are now building a new regional order that is a sustainable status quo. Turkey is going to still ask for the promotion of democracy, for the promotion of the reforms. However, it's not going to chase after the regime changes. And these countries, on the other hand, knows that nothing can be as it was for the Arab region, before the Arab Spring. So the regional rapprochements are going to go to the second stage. And of course, Turkey's relations with the West have always been a tension area. And that for that election, particularly for the West, there was a lot at stake because they almost dare to imagine a Turkey without Erdogan. It will be something quite new for them. So then how is going to be the course of these relations? I believe President Erdogan, he is going to be attacking the Western media, some of the activists, some of the journalists there, some of the academics, and some of the articles, readings, and so on. But overall, as a policy, I believe he's going to have a more constructive relations with the West. Reason for that, Erdogan has been fighting for a strategic sovereignty, or you can call it strategic independence. And that comes with a cost. So this table of the countries that have this strategic sovereignty is not that a wide table. So to be one of the shareholders there, to be one of the stakeholders there, you need to fight. And President Erdogan has been fighting since 2013, by the start of the Gezi protest in July 2014, or in June 2013 on. We have seen right after that, lots of the internal politics just got really crippled. There were some of even attempts within Turkey to arrest President Erdogan and maybe imprison him. And then right after that, in 2016, we have seen a failed coup attempt. And after that, according to President Erdogan, the country's economy has been targeted and so on. But it was a tough fight. But now, almost after a decade, I believe the West is now in a position that they see that it's not easy to defeat Erdogan through the elections or through the coups or maybe through the civil uprisings. And now they're in a position to accept him as he is. That's why President Erdogan is going to feel more comfortable. And the West, once they accept Erdogan as he is, so that means Erdogan has won the war of strategic sovereignty. So that's why the tension, I'm expecting a lesser tension. On the other hand, one of the main challenges is still going to remain there. How Turkey is going to balance its relations with NATO and with Russia. Just when he was delivering the victory speech from the presidential palace on the night of the election 2 days ago, he has been hinting that he's definitely going to remain loyal to the agreements that he has signed with Russia and with President Putin. How do we know that? Because he specifically has talked about creating a new energy hub very much close to Istanbul with Russia, and the Russian energy or the gas to be transported to Europe from that center on. So that's to remain as one tension still. However, I think that the West is going to be very harsh against Turkey when it comes to Turkey's relations with Russia. But Turkey is definitely going to continue to value its relations with NATO. The other one, Syria, I'm just concluding it. For Syria, we have been that, particularly from Turkey, there was a desire to normalize the ties, to repair the ties with Damascus. But recently, President of Syria, Bashar al-Assad, he was in Jeddah joining the Arab League summit, and he has been accusing Turkey and President Erdogan terribly. So right after that, we have seen the spokesperson of President Erdogan says that for sure there is no plan of a direct talk between President Erdogan and Bashar Syria. So in this sense, I think Turkey is going to be much more cautious. And so the rapprochement process between Ankara and Damascus probably is going to go into a kind of stalemate, into a kind of frozen mood. That must be expected. So for the next round, if I have time, I will try to focus on the internal dynamics in play. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, I would like to ask Ariel to make a general assessment. How do you see the elections and the results from point of view in Argentina? You haven't opened up your mic. Would you open up your? It's open.
Thank you, Mehmet. I agree with the previous speaker that this election was relevant for this year and have a specific geopolitical meaning in which many eyes were looking what's going on in that election. And elections show that Turkish citizens opt for continuity, both domestically and externally. So on the domestic side, Erdogan shows that his alliance is strong enough to combine elements of the conservative nationalist front that remained for the last decade as the majoritarian group, majoritarian bloc in Turkish politics. At the same time, the people opt and choose national security concerns and a narrative of Turkish readiness over economic constraints. I think this is very interesting because many, I think I was one of them, that were expecting some decrease in the turnover to Erdogan due to the economic crisis. Usually, and this is very common in my region in Latin America, if the economy is not going in a very good way, especially with inflation, well, you will have problems at the election. Well, this is something that didn't happen, and actually, even if it goes to the second round, the amount, the percent of votes for Erdogan is something out of the books in this problematic economic context. So I think Turkish politics has their own logic, and it's a logic that has been frozen for the last 10 years. That's following the previous speaker. In the last 10 years, Turkey went through a kind of time of troubles in which external and internal threats were very that makes complicated not only the Turkish domestic political environment, but also the economic and also the external front. So I think the next 5 years will be something different. It will be a time of challenges for Turkey, time of challenges that will be more focused on the domestic than the external agenda. I think there are many issues, especially related to macroeconomic order, that should be attached, especially for domestic stability. Inflation really is very problematic. And I'm talking in a country that have more than 100%, and I am increasing per year. So this is something that Erdogan will focus on. And also, of course, energy issues are other part of the priorities. But in sum, I think in terms of domestic politics, I think Erdogan will lead the next 5 years with a more quote like more comfortable environment in which well, the consequences of the Arab Spring are more far away. The Kurdish issue is even if it's present, is not so tough as during the peak of the Syrian civil war. But at the same time, there are very, very tough challenges for the Turkish future. But I think that this election shows some results that express how the Turkish voters will, and this is will increase the Erdogan legitimacy both domestically but also internationally. I think that I tapped my attention that many presidents from Latin America sent the congratulations to Erdogan. This is something not usual. At the same time, this reflect that leaders from Europe, of course, from Middle East and Africa, but especially from the West, they send congratulations, and this is something that is symbolic. At the same time, it shows that they have to deal with Erdogan for the next 5 years in a context of very tough regional confrontation between Russia and the West.
Okay, thank you. And now, can I ask you the question, same question to you, Professor Mehmet Özkan? How do you see the process, the election, the results? Some of the countries, some of the media outlets, they were saying that the process was not fair. It was unfair, as stated by opinion leader. Could you make a general statement, general overview or assessment about the election and the process?
First of all, I think there is no point of discussion whether the election was free or fair, because I think in Turkey there is no credibility issue of the elections. I mean, the participation has always been very high, and people go and vote irrespective of what the media says, what others think. So I think that point has been raised in some circles without much evidence. So only political participation showed this very clearly. But if I look at this election in general, I think this election has been surprising and shocking at the same time, because surprising even for the AK Party supporters, that I mean, many believe that perhaps the Erdogan will lose the majority in the parliament, and win in presidential elections. So now it was surprising because Erdogan won relatively easily in the majority in the parliament with the MHP, National Section Party, and at the same time he got a very good result in the first round, 49.5. So he could have won in the second. So that was surprising, and the shocking part, and especially for the opposition, because many people expected the opposition has a chance to win for the first time, because six-party alliance get together, and also there was a feeling that Erdogan will lose. Also, it was supported with the media, with the pollsters and everything, that even many outside of the country, or even if you look at Twitter inside of the country, believe that Erdogan would lose. But that's why it was surprising and shocking. Now, but what the result says, I think results in a sense it was a plebiscite on whether the road that Turkey has taken since 2016 should continue or not. Because probably in the history between 2016 and 2023 will be considered as a parenthesis, because these 7 years everything was based on security. Security threat, suspicion, because I mean the military coup after the failed military coup attempt, fetish terrorist organization and other issues, regional crisis, and in Eastern Mediterranean, in the regions, in Syria, in many other places. And lastly, I mean more than 1.5 years, the war in Ukraine. So everything was based on security, and everything was focused on whether Erdogan should leave from the power. I think now Turkish society, Turkish people has made a clear choice that they want to continue on this path in a way that Erdogan was seeking this autonomy and independence in its foreign policy and in its foreign relations, and keeping the Turkish national interest first, and based on that having a relation with others. I think that has been very clear, because that is in a sense it has been a sort of a plebiscite in that sense whether this road will continue or not. That's why I mean when I look at the general result, that's why I mean I think this plebiscite has been understood very well, that Erdogan won. On the night that we have seen on the night that many leaders from different countries, from Biden to UK to other countries, they celebrated the winning of the winning of election by Erdogan. They celebrated Erdogan. That's why I think now we enter the new period. I agree with Serdar that I mean probably we will be we enter a new period. I think now everybody understood outside that I mean there is no choice but to work with Erdogan. Also, it came in a point just before the elections, you know, there has been some rapprochement with the region in the Middle East and in other countries as well. Not much with Europe, but with the perhaps, I mean, with the Middle East. And this rapprochement probably will continue and will create new dynamics. And probably we will have a new era coming to spotlight. And we have seen that even with the CCs, I mean, to connection to the President Erdogan. And probably, I mean, in that sense, of course, domestically as well, I mean, Erdogan's his last term, that's what he said. I mean, he's candidating for the last time. We will see the repercussion. My expectation is perhaps this will be expertise period of Erdogan in power, maturing many things he initiated in the past, and systemizing many things. That's my expectation. But we have to see what would happen, and that's my general sense of assessment of election results.
Okay, thank you, Professor. You say that the election was kind of plebiscite, and the Turkish people made a clear choice, and this is the clear choice to this path, the Erdogan's path, to make the Turkish foreign policy independent. That was interesting. Now, I would like to ask Mr. Resul Serdar, since your expert on media, how do you see the media coverage? How especially Arab media, and we have been witnessing that most of the Arab media outlets, they were criticizing Erdogan, and still some of them, they are criticizing Erdogan and the government. They were blaming that Turkey's presence in Syria, they were presenting Turkey as an invader. But now I don't know how they frame the election, the results. And you were also saying that I will speak about the internal dynamics. Could you give us some words on it?
Well, globally, the media's reaction, particularly since 2013, since the Gezi Park protest, the media coverage about President Erdogan hasn't been that much positive. So Erdogan has been one of the easiest targets that comes with no accountability. So I think there is an interesting gap, a rift, when it comes to Erdogan, particularly regarding the Arab world. He's so loved by the people, by the citizens of the Arab republics, the countries, the states, the monarchies. And wherever we go for any kind of story to be coverage, to be reported, we can feel that vibe, particularly on the street, that that Erdogan is, as he is in Turkey, but particularly in the region, I think his popularity is much higher than his popularity in Turkey. So, but on the other hand, that doesn't imply when it comes to the governments in the Arab world. The governments are much more reserved and even to a certain extent, very much critical of Erdogan. And the reason for that, I think Erdogan's profile somehow matches with the dream of the people on the street. However, his profile also poses a threat to many of the governments and states in the region. The reason is because Erdogan is coming from a humble background, is a conservative Democrat, and he's winning the elections through fair and free elections. He's in power through fair and free elections. So symbolically, this definitely poses a threat to many of the Arab leaders who have been there either by coups or simply the main legitimacy is to be a member of a particular dynasty. So imagine that an ordinary Arab starts to ask, well, in Turkey, we have a conservative leader who definitely doesn't shy to emphasize that he's a Muslim, but he also believes in democracy, and he's holding on power through fair and free elections. So he has a legitimacy that's coming from millions of people from the nation through the ballot box. And so what's your legitimacy? That question is a serious question, and it's definitely being taken extremely serious by many of the leaders in the Arab country, because that also inspires change, inspires the new demands for the change, at least. That's why I think while he's quite popular on the streets, but he's feared, symbolically challenged, right, by many of the states and the leaders in the Arab world. So that rift, that gap, I think is going to still remain there. However, through my first answer, I have partly answered that actually. That's why I think the rapprochements are going to continue, because in 2010, when the Arab Spring has started, Turkey and Erdogan's position was crystal clear. Turkey was with change and was with the people, and was even to a certain extent ready to interfere militarily, if necessary, to change the regimes that are going against the will of their people. Because all the indicators by that time are showing that none of these regimes are going to survive. But after a decade of conflicts, of war, all that energy is now consumed. And both sides are coming to a point that, yes, reforms are needed. Yes, more democracy is needed. Yes, more inclusive approachment is needed. However, it's almost impossible to topple all of the regimes in this region and replace them with democratic ones. So I think Turkey, for now, is compromising on that and ready to accept a sustainable status quo. When I say sustainable status quo, is status quo with more democracy, with more human rights, a revised one, a reformed status quo there. So that's why for now, I think the relations between Turkey and the Arab world is going to be smoother in a sense. However, when it comes to media, they are, yes, quite critical toward President Erdogan. And one of the other reason for that is they're heavily influenced by the Western media industry. So the Arab world, with a couple of exceptions, of course, in general, the Arab media is still taking the Western media industry as primary reference, and they're heavily influenced on that, regardless of the influence of their governments on them. So when it comes to the internal repercussions of the implications of the outcome of this election, so there are a couple of fronts that Erdogan is definitely going to have challenges. So, yes, he has won another election, and he has shown that it's almost impossible to defeat him yet. After 40 years in politics, more than 2 decades in power, he has been able to secure the majority of the votes in this country. And he has shown, despite all the odds, he has shown that he is the most popular politician, the most popular leader in this country, period. No discussion about it. It was a decisive victory for him, a historic moment for Turkey. But celebrations are over. Now is 2 days after the election, and the problems, the imminent problems that needs to be immediately tackled are there. First and foremost is the economy. It's no secret that Turkish economy has been struggling, particularly in the last 2 years. Skyrocketing prices are hurting people. Turkey has one of the highest inflation rates in the world, and people are suffering on a daily basis. So that is going to remain as the main challenge for President Erdogan. And I think that's why during his victory speech from the presidential palace, presidential compound in Ankara, he has been focusing on this issue and promising a strong, a stable economy by increasing the production capacity of the country, and also promising to establish the new business hubs across Turkey to bring the unemployment down. So that is going to be one of the primary challenge for Erdogan. Another issue is the disaster area. So just nearly 4 months ago, Turkey has been hit by probably the biggest natural disaster in its history, by 2 powerful earthquakes. 11 provinces were affected. More than 13 people have been affected. More than 50,000 people died as a result. Tens of thousands of buildings have either collapsed or they're heavily. And as a result, for now, hundreds of thousands of people across provinces are either living in tent or container cities, and they are waiting the permanent accommodations, houses to be delivered. So, and for that, definitely Erdogan is the one to deliver, and he has promised a lot on that. Just recently, right after the first round of the election, before the runoff, where he visited was disaster area. And now we have seen that through his victory speech, he has been once again focusing on that and saying that within a year, all these people are going to be receiving their permanent houses, particularly before the winter comes. So that is almost mission impossible. Whether Erdogan is going to be able to deliver on his promises or not, we are going to see. However, it's going to remain one of the biggest challenges because of the scale of the disaster.
Mm-hmm.
But another one, just concluding that, polarization in this country. Yes, Erdogan had a decisive victory by securing more than 52% of the votes. However, we have seen that more than 47% of the population does not agree with his policies. And I think Turkish society now, politically particularly, is deeply polarized. So this polarization across these political lines is going to remain as a societal fragility or frailty in this country. So whether Erdogan is going to be able to normalize them, to narrow that gap or not, that's also going to remain one of important challenges here. So, and just after winning the election, the runoff, in front of his residence in Üsküdar in Kısıklı, Istanbul, and then a couple of hours later, when he landed in Ankara and delivered another victory speech to the nation and his supporters that have been waiting for him for hours and hours, have been particularly sending out some of the specific, particular messages. First, he said, when he or his party or his alliance wins, no one loses in this country. So the words were meticulously carefully picked. And said Turkey is the sole winner of this election. Even on the banners for the celebration that has been hanged over the presidential palace was simply written as Turkey's great victory. So if we look at the symbols, the wordings, it's telling a lot. And for the first time, President Erdogan decided to deliver his victory speech not from his party's headquarters, AK Party's headquarters in Ankara, but presidential palace. I think symbolically that's telling us a lot. Because delivering his victory speech on a balcony from his party's headquarters in Istanbul, but for the first time, presidential palace. By doing so, send out a message of the unity and the reconciliation through the symbols. He wanted to focus and emphasize that he's not only the leader of his party and supporters, but he's a of the nation. So all of that messages in terms of the words and the actions are telling us that Erdogan is well aware of this polarization, this societal fragility, and he is from now on trying to be more constructive and inclusive. However, it's going to remain as a real challenge that probably even will be toughest, that could decide, be determinative in the elections that are going to come in 2020.
Okay, thank you. That was interesting term that Turkey wants to see in the region, sustainable status quo. So thank you for your answer. And I would like to ask Ariel again, based on your expertise, you are professor in international relations. How do you see these elections and the results in terms of international dynamics? You know, Turkey's relations with the United States and Turkey's cooperation with Russia in Syria, and also Turkey's balanced policy in Ukraine war. How do you see? Is there a new period in terms of Turkish foreign policy? Ariel, could you open up your mic? It's not open yet. No, now it's open. Okay. Just 3 minutes, please, because we have run out of our time.
An interesting question. So in the last years, Turkey has pursued an autonomous perspective in world affairs, developing a balancing act between the West and Russia based on their own national interests, at the same time diversifying their relations towards the global South, and of course, putting a lot of attention in the Islamic world. So what will be the changes in Turkey external approach? So there are three concepts that are critical: terms, reform, and adjustments. In terms of terms, we won't see very swift changes in the orientation of the Turkey foreign policy. The general orientation will remain. This is the orientation of building strategic autonomy to develop regional powerness in the broader Middle East, but also counting Caucasus, Black Sea, the Balkans, and the relations, of course, with Russia and the West. So Turkey will stand in this position based on building autonomy. On reforms, I think we Charlotte told us something about that. There will be some smooth moves, especially in the normalization process with some Middle Eastern countries. And this is something that is not only, there are some advances in the last years, for example, the normalization process with Egypt, the normalization also process with Israel, and what is, I think, the most challenging issue, how to live with Assad and how to develop a kind of a general common ground to advance regional order that will be suitable both for Turkey, for Syria, but also we need to take into account that Iran and Russia are there. So I think this is something it's a very complex chessboard in which I think Turkey will attempt to advance in kind of develop a common ground, but it won't be easy. At the same time, I think that the domestic issues are also calling for some resolution about what will happen with the refugees in the future. So in terms of reforms, I think it will be focused especially in the relation with Middle Eastern countries. And on adjustments that are like small changes, I think we will in the future, and I think since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Turkey's relative weight in the strategic global chessboard, especially for the West, is increasing. So Turkey has a lot of not have a more weight, it's more important in terms of the Western and NATO agenda. So I think that Erdogan will ease of course, of negotiation, the position towards the blocking of Sweden to NATO. I think also United States and Turkey will overpass this very low moment in the bilateral ties. This doesn't say that we will return as the past, but I think that this election creates a momentum that can help to relations. At the same time, Turkey will maintain their relations with Russia, and I think what will happen there it's based on what will happen about Russia and Western relations, because a more confrontational regional order will be very harmful for Turkish national interests. At the same time, Turkey can play a mediator role as the Black Sea grain agreement, and that is, I think, a model to advance in terms of reconciliation Russian and Ukrainian positions in a post-war conflict solution.
Okay. I think the same question to you, Dr. Mehmet Özkan, based on your expertise also. How do you see the election in terms of international politics and international dynamics? Or how do you see that Turkish foreign policy will choose? Do you think that Erdogan will follow the same path in terms of independence from the Western bloc? So he will continue the coordination with Russia in Syria.
Well, I mean, as it was in domestic, as it is in domestic politics, in foreign policy as well, Erdogan is a figure larger than life. So I think that will be felt in coming years further. And what I see in Turkish foreign policy, it was already started from opening to, it was already started. Changing from opening to deepening. Now I think deepening will further deepen in coming years, because all this change and everything will be multiplied. Although we enter in a turbulence area, even this Turkey, Turkey's search for autonomy in foreign policy will sort of impacted others as a model, even in the Middle East, in the Gulf, in different countries, as you may see. They try to a little bit not disconnect fully, but sort of disassociate on some areas from the West. They try to have a little create room for their own foreign policy, as we see, in the Gulf and other places. I think complexities will continue in the region and security issues and everything. But I think we enter a new area, new chapter in Turkish foreign policy. I think all the debates and discussion are over. Now I think even the West and other countries, although unwillingly, I think they will accept that they will cooperate, or they will work with a new Turkey, with its independent foreign policy and its own activeness. So that's why this period will be different than the previous period. Of course, it will not be less crisis. It will not be more cooperation. It will be at least more understanding, perhaps, among each other. And we will see perhaps, that's why in the coming first meeting, which will be 11 and 12 of July in the NATO summit, that in there, I mean, the relations, perhaps bilateral meetings and everything will show the direction that Turkey will take, and probably the other leaders will take towards the Turkish foreign policy, Turkish action. And of course, there are several issues in the foreign policy area. First, the crisis in Ukraine that's continuing, and that's pending issue that's impacting Turkey a lot, and how it will go, and energy issues and the security issues in the region. Also, the issue between Armenia and Azerbaijan, that's still Nagorno-Karabakh, that's still very hot on this area. And I mean, Turkey will continue to sort of face with the Russian influence in its own surrounding region, and also Turkey will probably continue to expand its area of influence against Russia, sometimes against the West, against others. So I think there's a new area coming in that sense. Also, in the domestic front, as we can see, I mean, there are at least there are three actors in foreign policy: Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Defense, and Intelligence. I mean, MIT. So perhaps in this period, I mean, of each of them, they cover different areas. Sometimes, of course, with the leadership of President Erdogan, he's the key person in foreign policy. But we might see some reshuffling, some reorganization on that sense as well, because different entities has been followed different files. Perhaps we may see a different, I mean, sort of more coherence and coordination in that sense. That's also that will be perhaps a domestic institutional adaptation to the crisis and to the issues around Turkey. So my expectation, in brief, I mean, situation will continue. It will not change, but there will be more complexity, more stressors coming, more ad hoc diplomacy, and at the same time, perhaps more reasonable conversation, understanding is on the way, but it will not be without crisis. That's my expectation in terms of foreign policy. Of course, I mean, now there's a direct link between domestic politics and international politics, and how Turkish politics will be shaped after this election, and now in the coming months and years. Also, it will have an impact on foreign policy, because it will create how the outside of Turkey they perceive Turkey, other society's expectation and others as well. So this link will further deepen and continue to influence this coming years in Turkish foreign policy.
Okay, thank you. I think we are run out of our time. But if any panelist would like to add some comments, I can give 1 minute about the future scenarios. If you don't want to add something, I'm going to go to Q&A session. If anyone wants to ask a question, please raise your hand, or you can send a message from the box on the right side. We have just 3 or 4 minutes if you have a question, or if you want to add something, Mr. Resul or Ariel or Dr. Mehmet. If you want to add something, you can, just in 1 minute, you can add some comments about the future scenarios.
So may I interrupt?
Of course.
One of the main questions here that me as a journalist, and probably many people across the world, they're asking is 2023 the end for President Erdogan? So constitutionally, it's supposed to be his final term. And now, so does he have only 5 years and politics begun? Or is there any way out for him? So that also probably, that discussion, I personally do not have the answer, clear-cut answer. Many people will say that, well, yes, it is his final term. But on the other hand, we haven't seen him emphasizing particularly on that throughout the presidential election and asking people to vote for him for the final time. So by not emphasizing on that, for me, it was a hint that he might think of going beyond 2028. But in any way, I think this question is a simple question, however, very, very significant one. This question is going to be dominating Turkey's internal and international policies as well.
Okay, we have one question, I think. I don't know the name, but I see the name Reaxel or something. If you have question, please. Or you can use the message box over there. I saw some hand raised, but I don't know the name. If you are here, please ask the microphone so that we can open your microphone. Okay, we have a question, I think, in here. Turkey is more active international arena for some time. However, we don't see a jump in relations with Latin American countries. I think the question is to you, Ariel. Why do you think this is the case, or do you expect any change in the near future in terms of Turkey and Latin American relations? We haven't seen this, right? We always talk about relations with West and Middle Eastern countries and the crisis normalization process, other things. But we haven't seen, I personally, I don't know any president from Latin American countries came to Turkey and discussed some issues with Erdogan. Of course, they came, but it's not, popular. Why do you think so?
Well, Mehmet, the presence of Turkey is increasing really, really fast in the last decade. A lot of Turkish institutions are nowadays based on Latin America. For example, Maarif, TİKA, Anadolu Agency. So, yeah, the Turkish presence is really relevant. But we were expecting last year a presidential tour for the region that at the end it couldn't happen. But I think this year or next year we will have a presidential visit, a new high-level visit. The last one was 5 years ago, so the time passed, and this is something that helps to strengthen the relations to the highest levels. But there is, I think, one data that I will finish with that about Turkey and Latin American relation, that this year the trade will overpass $20 billion. $20 billion. So this will be something that puts Turkey in a very relevant position. And for example, it will almost overpass Russia as a trade partner in the region. So we are witnessing Turkey as a really major partner of Latin American countries, but still a lot of there is a lot of information and a lot of initiative from our region towards Turkey. I think that in this tango between Latin America and Turkey is who have the initiative, and I think that for our side we need to do our homework.
So you expect positive developments in terms of Turkey's Latin American relations in near future, right?
Yes, both political and economically. I think that the relations are booming, and I think that this re-election will strengthen a lot of tendencies. For example, 25 years ago, Turkey has only one third of the embassies that are now nowadays open in the region. So there are a lot of efforts on the Turkish side. And at the same time, we have Lula in Brazil, the president. Lula was the main interlocutor of Turkish Erdogan in the 20s, in the 2000s. And I think it will help to improve this strategic dialogue between the region and Turkey.
Okay, thank you. Rix Hayam, I wrote you from message box. If you see, you can direct your question. Do you think, do you think Turkey has come to stage of not being in state of obey politics, but the creator of politics internally and externally? I think the question is to Mehmet Özkan because it's about international politics, and he or she is still writing. How do you think that? I think the question is about Turkey's strategic autonomy. Do you think Turkey has come to the stage that not being state of obey politics, rather than now Turkey is creating a kind of politics internally and externally, tries to be more independent. How do you evaluate it?
I think the term obey is the term that comes, I mean, even during the Cold War, but I think the relations has become extremely complex in foreign policy, and Turkey has learned to play among this complex foreign relations context, because I mean, rather than, I wouldn't use any term like obeying, but I would say rather being an actor, being like seizing the opportunities and having a vision and making the broad plans so you can influence. But even for that, I mean, the connectedness is very high, and in many places and in many issues, you know, there are lots of actors and factors involving in the crisis or in the solutions. But Turkey has learned to play this, I mean, not bilateral relations, I call it complex foreign policy. And that's what we see as the result of perhaps in the last 20 years of experience in different fields, and Turkey has learned to play that.
Okay, thank you for answer. I think we are run out of our time, almost 1 hour. I would like to thank Mr. Resul Serdar from Al Jazeera, and I would like to thank Dr.
Thank you for
Ariel
having me.
from Argentina. I would like to thank Professor Mehmet Özkan from National Defense University, and I'm ending the session. Thank you for all for joining us, and stay tuned